downtown San Diego on a Sunday night. Pretty dead for a Sunday night out of all the nights I've been here. So, I want to talk about Instacart and the reason I left. So, to begin, Instacart is a big tech company that delivers groceries. A person drives to the store or rides a bicycle, depending on if they live in a walkable city like San Francisco or New York, etc. I started hearing about it a year and a half ago when I was working at an airport for Amazon, and it was a dead end job where you were treated like a slave. You work out in the really hot weather, or you work out in the really cold weather, like below zero, and snow, where you're in a vehicle that's barely heated, and you have supervisors that drive around in a car doing nothing with an air conditioner and a heater, yelling at you like a dog. It was the worst place I've ever been to, and the best decision I ever made was leaving without saying goodbye. So, a guy I knew at a grocery store we worked at, I go home and I ask him, why don't we have companies that deliver food from grocery stores? And he says to me, they do. It's called Instacart. I work there, and I make $700 to $1,000 a week. And I'm like, get out of here, dude. No way. Like, I'm making $12.50 at an airport where my life is at risk every day and treated like a slave. So, I finally decided to start working there. That video was recorded in the beginning of 2020 when I started becoming popular on social media when making motivational and inspiring videos at the time. We'll talk about that later on in the video. So to begin, yes, I was starting out doing Instacart after one of my buddies told me they were making this amount of money a week. I was like, no way. I was skeptical at first, and when I realized how much money I was making every week, which was $1,200 or sometimes $1,400, and I was working from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. I worked my ass off because I was just achieving and grinding my goal to get to San Diego. And I remember when I first said I was going to take the leap of faith in San Diego, everyone was so doubtful and angry towards me making that decision, especially my family. They were like, you can't go, or you can't do this, you can't do that, you're not allowed to. And I'm like, says who? And even family members who say, oh, you can't go. And I'm like, what's stopping me? Like, nothing is stopping me, and there's nothing to lose. Like, if you want something in life and people will say things to you like you can't do this or you can't do that or try to make you doubt yourself, if that ain't slavery, then what is? So to begin, after 6 months of being homeless in San Diego, I finally achieved my goals and accomplished getting the keys to San Diego in September. It was in Poway after getting back from Denver, which I have another video talking about, and I'll put in the description. So after I got the keys, it felt like victory. I was really happy and excited. I felt like all of my months of hard working and curveballs were finally paying off. It overall just felt like the key to the world because I achieved something that I didn't think I could, because I lived in the fifth most unaffordable city in America at the age of 27, and I was able to get my apartment from my long work history and skills I've learned over the years, put it all together and creating the mindset to be able to live in San Diego. And so after the achievement, I was just amazed at how well developed the apartment was and the town I was in. I remember it was my favorite apartment even to this day out of all the 3 apartments I've stayed at. I remember the door was about 1.5 inches thick, the windows were fiberglass, the walls were thick. Same with the carpet, which means it was soundproof, meaning that you couldn't hear your neighbors and your neighbors couldn't hear you. And because the roof and the walls were so thick, and there was a tree in the middle of the complex, the sunlight was being blocked off from that, which means the apartment inside would be 68 degrees when it's 108 outside the day I moved in. So I never needed an air conditioner and I never needed a heater. It was such an amazing apartment where my electric bill was $44 every month because I was never in it for one, and I never had anything running besides a fridge and the oven stove clock. And sometimes I play guitars, and maybe I ran a space heater a couple times because just like a desert, it gets really cold at night but hot during the day. So it would get pretty chilly in the middle of the night. So I'd rather... brain will start to change when it comes to living there versus being homeless, because you're so used to just not having to worry about rent or bills, and when you get your apartment you get kind of stressed about the bills and you see how expensive it truly is. And instead of working 12 hours a day for fun, trout around the coast, the mountains, the desert, and all that stuff in one day, you start to become dependent on each hour you work for. So you start to forget how fun it was, and you kind of lose yourself because you're so focused on the rent and the bills. So, in other words, when things get hard, you start looking for things to blame. But I wasn't looking for anything to blame. I just got stressed about the rent and bills, and I got a little overwhelmed. And there were times I remember I had to go back up and down to Northern California with my family. And that was really fun. I like Northern California, then going back down south. Luckily, I left during a wildfire that time. That was some crazy stuff. So after a few months settling in, this is kind of when I started to realize California sucks. And I remember the first week I moved in my apartment in Poway, I was still registered here in the state of Ohio. And when I accidentally entered a military base in Mira Mesa, which I explained in one of my older videos, I remember the moment I entered, I was trying to head to a Chipotle during a 20-minute unpaid break from Instacart, and I Googled the nearest Chipotle to get a quick burrito. And there was this area I entered to, and there were like those concrete walls that you see in construction areas. Like, you know what I'm talking about when they're shaped like that. I would see that and a fence on top of it, meaning you couldn't turn around. And when you enter, you got like soldiers getting up on you asking you 20 questions. And because I'm a US citizen, I didn't think it was going to be a big deal. I thought maybe they exchange my name and information and why I'm there and turn me around like they do in Navy bases. Like in the Navy, if you accidentally enter their entrance, they just question you, they ask for your name and what you're doing, and then they guide you where you need to go. But the Marines, I swear, they are a special kind of stupid, because when they saw that my plates were from Ohio, they started treating me like I was some kind of terrorist or a part of ISIS. And then when they saw the pine tree flakes in the black seat of my car, they thought it was weed, even though it's legal in the state of California, just not possession of it in a car, kind of like alcohol. But when they saw the pine tree flakes, without even thinking, oh, I don't smell weed, so it's not weed. But after they saw my plates were from Ohio on my ID, they were literally weird about it. They were starting to act like I was some kind of terrorist, as if they think California is a country and Ohio is another country. And they had me parked behind their trooper security car, and one was on each side asking me 20 questions, and they had me put the keys in the center of the dashboard. And I remember they were treating me as if I was getting arrested or if I was a victim during the Holocaust. Like, they were literally like this: interlock your hands, and I didn't know what that meant. They literally grabbed my hands and made me do that towards the back of my head. And I was getting a little terrified at this moment. Like, they're literally treating me as if I was the leader of, like, the Boston Massacre or something. And literally, when they had to do the interlock, that was when my phone dropped about 4.5 feet high. And after that, I was never able to get good footage on that phone, especially guitar clips or in the middle of talking. Like, for some reason, the sound just tends to, like, completely cut off. One of the things I learned in life is to do what you don't want to do. For example, did I want to work from 10 a.m. to 10 o'clock at night? After I picked up my phone, they had me sit on the curb while they were searching my car, and they literally pushed me to the curb. And at this point, it literally felt like I was in a communist country or Nazi Germany, or I'm being treated like a member of ISIS. And as they searched my car, they had one guy standing there to make sure I don't grab my pockets and pull out a gun. And I'm like, even though you just searched me doing a pat down, you for some reason still think I have a weapon, because I guess they're just that fucking stupid. And then there was one guy on the top of the tower, like the guard tower, with a rifle pointing at me. And it literally felt like some Nazi Germany shit at that moment. And that moment was when I started to realize California sucks and the Marines are some of the dumbest motherfuckers of all time. Now, I'm not saying all Marines are bad people, but those people in particular are the reason I have no support for the Marines and the military. So, after that, I turned around and never went the fuck back. And I've had anxiety ever since. Like, I've had that anxiety for years. I remember every morning at around 7:30 a.m., which was the time I'd usually get up or preferring my 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. shifts, I would hear like police sirens like right by the apartment. It would be woo woo, and right when it reaches the apartment, it just fades away. Woo. And I remember years ago when that happened at a bad area I lived at next door, you'd hear that in the stop, you'd hear an announcement, shh, pull over. And every time I heard that, I would always think like the cops are parked like in front of the parking lot of the side of the road, like GTA, where they all park and like 20 cops and SWAT teams come in. That's literally what it would feel like. I would be vigilant, checking up and looking at the window and the door, crouched down, and feeling like there'd be like 15 police officers and 10 SWAT teams and 2 FBI agents busting open the door and tackling me down and arresting me because I drink out of a plastic straw or something. Like that's how bad California was. That's how stupid their laws were. Was you felt like you would break a rule and you wouldn't even know about it till like the next day. And after that Marine base incident, I always felt like they were going to come back and get me, even though they didn't have any idea where I lived. I just felt like somehow they were going to come in and. Can I help you? I always felt like 20 cops and SWAT teams were gonna come in and like bust open the door and like arrest me or something. And I might have been overreacting or my imagination was running wild, but that was how I felt every day being there. Like California really was resembling a third world country. And that was when I wanted to get the fuck out of California. Like seeing everything on social media, online, movies, TV shows, books I read, especially that douchebag in Los Angeles, the bartending therapist guy, about like how LA is so great and awesome, and all these other stories I hear about California, and it looking so amazing, being the California dream. But then I experienced the harsh reality of California, and this to me is just, I don't get it. I don't get why this is how it is compared to what it used to be when we lived there years ago in 2000 till 2005. Like, I remember California used to be such a cool state, like back in my childhood. And to see what it looks like now that I'm in my late 20s, I am just like, I don't get that. Like, I don't get why this is what I see. And I didn't really enjoy the scenery in California after that. Like I just couldn't enjoy it, even the weather. Like it just was so hostile being there. It just felt very controlling and very surveillant, like cameras everywhere, cops hiding under trees and bushes coming out to get you. Like it didn't really resemble America. And that was why San Diego was never a traveling music video like you see on many other videos I have. Like there's songs of San Diego and 1,200 pictures or more I have of it, but it was never like a traveling music video like it was with everything else I've uploaded, because every day I woke up, I just didn't want to do anything. It was too nerve wracking to enjoy anything because of all the rules and the police and that Marine base incident. And then my ghost girl dying in Colorado that I talked about earlier in one of my videos, which I put in the description. Like, I even met one of my best friends, Seabass, and I don't know what happened to him, but he was my bro. And I remember we didn't even hang out much because I just was too scared to go anywhere. He came over to my apartment a few times, which I'll get to in the ending. So to continue on, I remember I had to be very frugal with my spending because of how expensive it was. Even though the rent may have taken like maybe 60% of my income, meaning that I had more money to spare for gas and trips to San Francisco when needed, I needed to be very careful with my money, so I had to track every dollar I spent. And I remember I had to even categorize it to see what I need to cut down. So I'd go as far as to figure out what I need to eat. I was like, okay, I need protein, I need vegetables, I need vitamins, I need carbs. So what can I do to get that on a tight budget? So I thought of stir fries and Asian foods. So there was a Asian market called H Mart down the street, and that was where I'd go for shopping for $30 versus 50 at a greedy corporate store like Kroger slash Ralph's. So I would get like beef, bok choy, green onions, carrots, Taiwan cabbage, the mushrooms, chestnuts, cube sliced beef, the rice, some teriyaki sauce for flavoring, and some ramen. And all that would total up to like $35 versus like 50 or more at a Ralph's. And so I would cut up all the vegetables. Oh yeah, and broccoli. I'd also put some broccoli in there. And I remember I only ate one meal a day. And sometimes I put in a plastic Tupperware container. And I remember as I'm doing the deliveries, every day it's sunny in California, especially San Diego. You wake up, the sun's out, 75 degrees. Every day it was like the same weather. So I had the plastic container with my lunch in it. And as the sun beats on it for 4.5 hours straight or longer, I remember my food would be like warmed up and ready to eat within half the day. And so I wait about 6 hours or so, and by the time I eat the food, it's already warmed up. A lot of people say it's gross and that it could contain bacteria everywhere, but I don't think bacteria really takes that long to take effect because I did that for months and never had a problem. I was actually losing a lot of weight in a short period of time. I was a twig after a while, but at towards the ending of the year, as I started to get the hang of San Diego and living on my own and changing my nutrition, I started feeling a lot better. I really wasn't in much fear or motion to stress. I was actually doing pretty good. I remember as New Year's came around for the video I'm talking about that made me popular. I remember I was built like a stallion at the time. I remember when I was up and down San Francisco, I would take like 25,000 steps average up and down the hills and stairs to the Golden Gate Bridge and back downtown, and drive 9.5 hours back to San Diego with 4.5 hours of sleep. Like, I was a machine and a stallion back then. Like, I was in some of the best shape of my life back in the day. And I remember I was in San Francisco during when I was in Christmas time with my family, not far from the area. I went up to San Francisco and just got some footage and pictures. And I remember out of nowhere, I decided to talk about how great the year 2019 was. And out of nowhere, I didn't think about it. I just pulled out my phone and talked. And before I knew it, the video was popular. I remember within like 10 minutes or less, someone from San Diego messaged me saying, "Hey, you live in San Diego. I just saw your video. It's amazing what kind of a life you've had." And then hours after, there was hundreds of people from like 50 countries around the world like following me and hitting me up and messaging me. And I basically was like Jesus to these people. And not long after that, I did the New Year resolution video that I uploaded where I was in downtown San Diego talking about how you rely on external motivation to get you to do anything, and that's why your New Year resolution doesn't work. It was basically a ripoff of Jeff Cavalier of Athlean X's video for New Year's he did back in 2016. I figured since everybody forgot about it, I would pass it on with my own words. And that those videos were so great and inspirational and straight to the point with no scams or BS in it. Nobody did anything that I talk about in them. Like, I worked my ass off and achieved my goals and grinded to get to where I was able to have that extraordinary life. And the truth was, in the middle of 2021, it was all gone. But after I made those New Year's resolution videos, I think I had about 600 people total all add me on Facebook and a lot of them messaging me. I was basically a saint and Jesus to these people. And it blew my mind. I was like, I'm becoming a mini celeb, just like you see on the YouTube and social media celebrities. Like, it's like my seed sprouted to get there. And I was happy and excited, and I was kind of getting a little cocky and arrogant, but at the same time helpful and caring. I remember I had my hair cut the way I liked it during that video, and it was staying that way. And as I was posting like selfies and pictures of myself, I remember it would get like 100 likes within like a couple hours. And the first 5 minutes posting it, there'd be like so many likes after likes and comments. I remember as I looked in the mirror more, I started realizing what a stallion I was back then. Like, I was in the best shape of my life in history at that time. I felt so good about myself seeing those pictures. And I started to make more content talking about how I took the leap of faith to San Diego like a few days later on the first week of New Year's. That's when like all my followers started losing their commitment towards me. Like it went from having like hundreds of views and likes with comments to like maybe 30 views with 2 comments. And when I saw that nobody watched it, that was kind of when I got frustrated and put a stop to making the motivational videos. And that's why I haven't made motivational or inspiring videos in years, is because those videos were so great. Nobody did anything that I talk about in them, and after like a week or so, they just forget about you. And so after that, I put a stop to making the videos, but I still posted like pictures. I was actually getting back to doing the traveling where I was back on the coast and the mountains and everything in between, getting footage. And soon after, at the end of January, I remember I had $300 under my name and rent was due because the Instacart was going downhill from some lawsuit they had at the time. And so the rent of 1640 was due in 5 days, and I felt like I was terminated, so I had to accept my defeat. And in the middle of the night, I was in the bedroom of the apartment just playing without looking at the guitar and had the lights off. And so that was where the song California Road Trip was created. It's basically the San Diego song, but with the same chords, but with different chords blending in between, kind of like in a pattern. And I either forgot to turn off the phaser, or I wanted to keep it on to see what it would sound like on different effects. I've had a lot of comments saying it does have a California sound to it. A lot of comments said it was Red Hot Chili Peppers with the fuzzy distortion pedal. All in all, they said it sounds like California, and so that's why it got its name, is from California. And as I was playing it, especially like towards the ending, I'd think of like driving around Torrey Pines, around the curve, and seeing the beach, and then seeing the palm trees around it, and just overall thinking of all the times I had in California. And so that was when it was a song a few months later. And I remember I told the landlord what was going on, and he said, "No worries, you have till like the 20th till we start taking action," or something like that. He basically said, first month's forgiveness. And I was relieved. So I was working and working and grinding and stacking money to pay the rent. I remember like a couple days after that, I had a letter taped underneath the doorknob, and I can see it at the end of the parking lot. And I look at it and I read it, and it was from the landlord, and it said 3 days to pay or quit notice. And I thought they were literally under eviction notice where I had 3 days to pay or I'm evicted. And I'm literally panicking, freaking the fuck out. And I was like terrified, texting the landlord saying, "Dude, I'm sorry, I will pay you as quickly as I can. I don't have any money right now." And he's just like, "Dude, relax." And I was like, "How can I relax, dude?" And I called my uncle about it, and he said that's just the landlord stepping his foot down at his end. And so I was able to pay it back, and in the end it was all laughs. But I remember like in the middle of it, I noticed the fridge light was turned off, and I thought he shut off my power. And this is where it gets really funny. So at the end of the night, I'm texting the landlord saying to him, "Did you shut off my power?" And he's like, "I don't know. Did you pay your electric bill since you didn't pay my rent?" And anyway, he said the fridge light's probably out and sends me a picture of the bulb for the fridge from Walmart.com and said, "Here, you can order one." And so what's funny was as I'm texting him asking if he shut off my power, I remember the kitchen light and the fan in the dining room was running while I asked him that. And I think I was both high, paranoid, and just high anxiety overall, or just really stoned out of my mind because, hey, did you turn off my power even though the light's on, the fan's running? So after I got everything paid midway through February, I was doing money orders to pay him back, and there was a 7-Eleven a 30-second walk down next to my apartment. And so, as I handed the rest of the money that I owed to him, it was in the middle of February. And I remember as I paid him all back, he was just like, "Oh, good. I knew that would motivate you to pay me back." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And he's like, "No, not on board right now." And so, anyway, I went in there to sign the papers saying that I wasn't going to be staying in San Diego or that apartment because the lease was about over in March, and this was midway through February, so I had to sign some paperwork while I was there to basically say I'm not staying and not paying month to month or anything like that. And so I told him I'm going to be heading up to San Francisco, and he's like, "I don't know why you're going up there, but okay." And so as I'm up in San Francisco seeing one of my family members, I remember actually back in December, I remember somebody was telling me that there was a coronavirus outbreak happening from China and that we were on code orange and to warn the world. But I didn't think much of it. But it was middle of February. I was working on my California road trip music video. And as I'm with my family in Petaluma, heading up and down San Francisco to get footage, I remember I was in downtown San Francisco walking into the Golden Gate Bridge, and that was all the footage I had for San Francisco was the Golden Gate Bridge and not downtown. And this was the exact reason. The day of that week, I was walking to the Golden Gate Bridge and back, which was a total of 28,000 steps, and I didn't have time to get footage of downtown because the sun was going down. So I had to wait till next week to get back there. And as that week went on, when I was doing the footage of Petaluma and Santa Rosa and the area up north of I think called Windsor, I went back the next Sunday after that, and that was when COVID hit. Like it just hit out of nowhere. Like I remember everybody was freaking the fuck out. People were just in and out of the Costco parking lot. Welcome to the Costco in San Francisco. And I didn't even know what was going on as I don't watch the news or keep up with anything going on around me. So I was just unaware of what was going on. And everyone was freaking out buying everything in bulk, and the Asians were wearing masks, and everybody was running away from the Asians like they were serial killers or kung fu masters or something. And I didn't have a clue. I thought maybe there was a sale going on at Costco that's caused people to go crazy. But it wasn't until halfway in the day I got notified from Instacart saying that COVID was around, that we all had to be aware and be safe. And so after that, I remember I was making like $50 an hour, including tips. At this point, I just didn't give a shit about COVID. I was like, this virus is making me money. I think I came home with like $300 the first day COVID happened in San Francisco. And it was the same with the following week after that. Like, I was back there again the next day. And I remember I was making enough money to be able to pay the last month's lease of the apartment and being able to have money to spare. And at this point, I felt like all the stress and frustration was over and that I can relax. And so after I got back to San Diego, I took a break and relaxed a bit. And before that, I was at my vacation beach for the last time in Morro Bay. And as I'm back in San Diego, I remember I went up to go see that douchebag bartending therapist guy for the last time. And the guy was just a total dick. And he basically said things to me like, I don't know, there's something mentally wrong with you, or if you're just lazy. And I was really insulted and upset with the way he was acting around me because I was just like, my girl in Colorado is dead. I had to deal with this and that. I went through a military base incident. And the fact that he said that to me really hurt me inside. And it made me want to burn his book with a lighter right in front of him because I was just that upset with the guy. And as I got my last recording, he basically said to me, we talked about this 4 or 5 times and it's the same thing. It's been Groundhog Day. And then goes on to say, we talked about you're supposed to say get another job, which was bartending. And I have no point in telling you what starting a business is about if you can't figure out how to get a job in a restaurant. To be honest, I didn't really want a job in California or anything to do with the state. I just wanted to get the fuck out of California, and I was just waiting for the lease to be over. And that was why I quote unquote procrastinated and didn't want to do anything. And here's this douchebag just all up in your ass about this and that. And he goes on to say, most people who leave California, they don't come back. And I'm like, with the way I'm experiencing San Diego, I can see why. Like, God, California sucks. Like, you see homeless people in tents on the sidewalks with piles of shit and smelling piss everywhere, with graffiti and trash everywhere. Like, it doesn't look like America. It literally looks like Haiti and Cuba. And I saw that in San Diego long before the pandemic. And so I remember that was the day I saw LA at its cleanest air quality in history. And so as I'm back in San Diego, this is when everyone was getting toilet paper. Never have I seen this before, but when I needed a pack of water in the same area as the toilet paper, I saw like people gathered up and the associates blocking the aisle with do not cross stickers. And the associate was yelling at me saying to basically leave if I have a problem with it. And I was like, what's the problem? I don't even know what's going on. I'm just here for a pack of water. And then everyone's just like all in panic. And you see like the line of like 150 people or more to the checkout. And I've never seen this before, but once the associates opened up the aisle, everyone just came swarming in. Like, even people who weren't in line, they were just sprinting in there to grab the toilet paper. Like, everybody was grabbing toilet paper, like, stacked up 15 feet high. Like, they weren't getting groceries, no gift cards, no medications, no automated supplies, no prescriptions, just toilet paper. And soon after that, it was cleaning products from A to Z. Like, people were hoarding every fucking thing they could. And these people were fucking just as retarded as the guys at the military base, if not stupider. And things were just wild back then. And because it was COVID and everybody was freaking out, they were doing hazard pay where it was $40 a batch versus like the usual 15 or 20. So it was money, money, money. But with everything I dealt with and not having to work again and basically waiting about 17 days for the lease to be over so you can get the fuck out of California, I just decided to smoke pot, sleep till noon, eat Mexican food, play guitar, and walk around Poway. Like, I could have used all that time to like finish the San Diego music video and the footage, but I didn't. Do I regret it? Yes, because it was really fun driving in San Diego, and compared to what it's like today, I imagine it's like a time capsule. Like, I really do look back wishing I could have went to Escondido, getting the footage of the mountain going spiral, seeing everything in between, being down a diagonal slope with the stoplight in the middle, the spirals and curves up and down mountains, feeling like it's a roller coaster, and seeing downtown. Being in Torrey Pines up the mountain with the beach curved. Like, I had plenty of time to get all that footage, but I just chose not to in favor of sleeping and drinking and eating Mexican food. Um, that was that. I remember a few times Seabass would come over and we'd be jamming and playing and be walking around town. And I remember the last night in San Diego before I turned in my keys, and I'll never forget it. Seabass came over. It was a rainy night. As we were playing, having pisco sours, we went to 7-Eleven, getting some munchy snacks, taking a few hits. As I walked him back to his car, he said, "Will you come back?" And I was like, "I don't know, man. I might come back someday, but for now I have to leave." And it seemed as if we were the only two still in California. Literally, so many people were leaving California. I remember him and I would take walks in downtown San Diego for hours, and we would be on the other side of the city towards the urban, and we would never see a person, we'd never see a car or anything going on. Even though it felt adventurous in downtown San Diego, there was just no action, no activity. It was a ghost town. And I remember the night he drove back to his place, I immediately went back to the apartment and started packing as quickly and free good as I could. It was kind of like Tetris, putting everything back in my car by creating new space and stuff. I did it the entire night with no sleep. I had to sacrifice some stuff. I remember toilet paper was falling out of the trunk of my car rolling. And at that time, if you were caught with toilet paper, you would have probably been shanked or shot 87 times just for a roll of toilet paper. And so I remember as everything was finished, you literally couldn't see the back or the sides of the car because all my stuff was literally in it. And I remember when I turned in the keys, I had my last picture of Poway, and just looking at that picture just takes me back 4 years. I still remember the ground and the road being wet from the rain the night before. I remember walking up the little slopey hill to my car, and I remember getting in the car, reversing carefully, and then driving out of there and taking the I 5. And I remember when on the I 5, I was in Los Angeles, and I remember I was able to see everything so clearly, the green mountains, parts of the ocean, downtown at a far distance, and the Hollywood sign. And the highway was so clear, I was able to get out of the downtown LA area in 30 minutes versus its average 2.5 hours. And I remember midway through LA, there was a cop and a motorcycle behind me, and I was like, "Oh shit, he's gonna arrest me." But then the guy's like, "Nah, he's leaving. Why bother?" And so after that, I remember I had to get to Fresno on the way to San Francisco, and so I had no gas. At least not enough gas to get to Fresno, which was another, I think, 3 or 4 hours away. And my car was filled with all my stuff in it, so I couldn't just do an Instacart order, and I had to really think. And I remember I was in Sherman Oaks, which is like a really rich suburban area you would probably see on so many movies of Los Angeles. That was where I took some orders, and that was how I got back up north to Fresno for a little while before I left the state of California at the end of March. Looking back at the times I was walking at Poway at night to the Mexican restaurant at 3 a.m., calling it the Mexican Adventure, and looking back and realizing that 4.5 years ago, I had my first apartment in San Diego, California, living by myself, traveled across the country without any financial help from anybody, and I overall was independent and living the dream. But I look today, and it's crazy how now I'm 32 and I don't have a future long-term career. I don't have any savings. I don't have a house. I was living in my car for a short period of time. And now I'm back living with my family, and this to me is like, I don't get it. I don't get why this is how we are living now compared to what it was 4.5 years ago.